Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Macro Podcast. I am talking to my great friend Dan Cruz about the magic of negotiation. Dan is a wildly successful realtor in a probably almost Chris Voss is the guy who's been practicing it for years, but Dan, in my mind, has been really by far and away the best master of the never split the difference tools. And I thought he'd bring Dan on and talk about how negotiation and how it can change your world. And we'll talk a little bit about how I think it changed mine and literally get into the weeds a little bit about why never split the difference tools and what that can do for you. So Dan, first and foremost, thank you for joining the call.
Oh, awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And Dan, before we get started, can we talk a little bit about where your arc in terms of like what were your life before? And I literally think much like AD, before Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, and after Never Split the Difference. Can we talk a little bit about how did you get into the field to begin with, and how did you evolve into somewhere where you got to that point?
Essentially, I did my first listing presentation as a realtor, and I had this what was that? Shoulder pain, a tension.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking to a homeowner and I want the listing, and so yeah, I'm a little tense, and it's bothering me and it's getting in the way. And I'm doing my presentation, and he goes, "This is the same thing this other agent did," which I'm like, "Oh, that's good. I'm in line with what the other agents are doing." Did not get the listing. But that always bothered me about that tension. Listen, I went to communication studies, dropped out of grad school because that wasn't helping.
Dan, you literally got literally to one class away, and
One class.
you're
Well,
like
it's
doing
paradoxical.
yeah.
They say if you put MA on your emails, that can change dynamics of a communication.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm done. It's not helping my tension. The professors are miserable at home and at work at the institution. Man, I drove a cab on weekends. Maybe if I have 1,000 conversations with strangers, that'll help. Did not, but there was one great combo I remember. It was from a guy that asked, "What's your story?" And I remember I blabbed so much. I'm like, man, that guy found out a lot about me.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I'm into Tony Robbins. I'm into all that stuff. Finally got into Black Swan, way different. Had to change a lot of my things with communication. It's totally different. It definitely took me another level. It took me to top producer.
Yeah, and I want to really unpack it because the process, and I don't know, and this is the number one thing I'm interested to know your take on this. I see a lot of people recommend the book, and my experience of it was the book was great. Oh, that's awesome. That's incredible. And then you set it down and nothing really changed. Did you instantaneously have the practice of the tools, or did it take some time to really try to really unpack it?
You know what? It took something else. It took loss aversion. So I was told by my wife's boss, successful, that his brother, who's more successful, read this book and he's recommending all the employees to read it. Never Split the Difference. And I remember asking some of them if they read it, and they said, "Man, I'm not going to read a book during my shift. I'm a property manager. I get paid to manage properties, not read at my off time." So I'm like, well, I'm commissioned, baby. I better read this book.
Yeah.
This other guy's commissioned. There's something to it. I did not like the book, did not finish the book. Instead, I found it's on SlideShare, Never Split the Difference cheat sheet. And I just like the practical, here's the tool, here's his effect. Boom, boom, cause effect. With 93% likelihood that you'll succeed or uncover so much that you'll say, this is a bad deal, I don't want it. Really changed a lot. Now I felt in control, and inadvertently that fixed my tension.
So you're saying this is a great point, and I'd love to kind of stick a pin in this one. By finding the tools, it it really altered even your comfort level, even in the conversation.
Yeah, just by more like testing it. I kind of took my emotion words. Even in a hostile environment south side of Chicago, managing a property, and I would implement it. Everybody stayed cool. Results were had, and so like it's important. The results will take care of themselves if you focus on the tools. As Chris Voss says, practice each one 60 times. Gosh, there's about 12 of them at least. Right now, I'm practicing dynamic silence more, and something else I've been practicing more. But yeah, I'm always trying to pick 2 tools for the week to practice.
And I guess we should do that real quick for those who haven't read the book. There are basically 9 tools. Let's go through it. Dynamic silence, summaries, labels, paraphrase. And so to define summary real quick, summary is just 2 or 3 paraphrases plus a label. Then there's minimal encouragers. I'm trying to think what else? Mirrors. And then maybe I'm wondering, Dan, would it be helpful to demonstrate each one a little bit for folks to see what they look like?
No-oriented questions.
No-oriented questions. Calibrated questions.
Calibrated questions, of course. Dynamic silence. We can, and then there's, vision labels and all other kinds of labels, emotional labels. It goes on and on. But yeah, you were going to say?
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. Maybe we can demonstrate real quick for the folks that are playing along at home, real quick, what you're looking to do in your negotiation practice. Also, in addition to being a realtor, you're finding a negotiator on demand training organization. So if you want want to consultate with somebody who's really steeped in this stuff, I cannot recommend Dan higher enough. Before we demonstrate, I do want to tell my story with Dan a little bit, because I think it's instructive on how I think that you should view the book personally. I picked up the book and I'm like, well, it seems like this is just great, but if you don't practice it, it doesn't matter. And so I just put it aside for literally about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then after I'd read it, and then I'm like, well, let's go on Facebook, see if there's anybody talking about like a discussion group or anything. And sure enough, there was a fantastic, about a 4,000 member Facebook group, and it was cool. And then after a while, I noticed Dan's like, "Hey guys, I'm ready to practice. Anybody want to practice mock?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is awesome! Exactly what I was looking for." And I still laugh at how bad my first mock with Dan was. And I have to say that the willingness to look foolish when practicing mocks are important, because it was horrible for me. And actually, it took me probably 2 months at least before I really even started to integrate the tools. But having said that, Dan really led the way, and I think Dan, you were doing it for about 2 years before I met you, I think, or somewhere along that line.
Yeah.
And so I guess what we should do next is maybe demonstrate the tools, maybe as a kind of an overview, or we can always do that, or we can take a different direction and talk about big picture stuff first, and then go from there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, let's. I like a little bit of theory. It practiced earlier today.
Yeah.
We'll put the link for the mock negotiators on demand. People can get an idea of what a mock looks like. Yeah, it's like it's embarrassing for sure, because people are judging how you communicate, how you get things. And sometimes, the biggest one is, well, you focus too much on you and not enough on them. You gave out too much info. So yeah, practicing the mock, that's key. And let's I'm curious to know, man, you probably, I'm shocked. You've had like what, 50 interviews already?
Yeah, I think we're close to that number on the Real Estate Macro podcast. in terms of overall, counting in the presentations and the mocks, I'm sure are pretty, presentations and podcasts, I think I'm pretty close to about 50 total with the presentations plus podcast, for sure.
Oh, that's big. You know, you're not afraid of success of being out there.
Well, and I will say, and this is again why I'm such a, I don't know if there are a ton of books that I like, and there are some books that I love. Some books I think you should burn, and I don't mean that in a, you shouldn't, not think these thoughts. It's just the books are so stupid, you should burn it. But anyway, and then there are certain books that maybe are an all-time book. And for me, a top 5 list, it has to be in my top 5 all time. And here's why. I had a major problem, and I didn't know my major problem was, this is my favorite saying about this. A jar cannot read its own label. And that's the beauty of working with Dan and his mock negotiation training, is that you get observation from others of what you're doing. And again, 1 or 2 times is great, but doing it 50 or 100 mocks, you actually learn a lot in a period of time by doing it over and over and over and over again. But having said that, I would have this tendency, because I get so geeked out on ideas, that they call it in sales, show up and throw up. And so when I'm networking with people and all that, I'm just blah, 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 puking all over them, all my ideas.
Yeah.
And the behavioral change stairway, which is probably the core tenet of the Black Swan tool, changed my life. When I started networking with the behavioral change stairway in mind, just incredible results. And so that's why I'm such a huge proponent of it.
And you know what's interesting about it? When I started, my biggest focus was on the report, because as a realtor, that's all we're taught, report. And I would still get lost, and people told me like, well, you're not focusing on the first step, which is listening, Dan. You're not listening. And I go, well, I want the report. I don't want to listen. Well, you got to listen to get the report. And it took me a while to really let that click and let it show through in practice, right? Suspend your need, that commission breath. And if they don't reciprocate with a result, then yeah, you can assert yourself. Yeah, the behavioral change stairway, first step is listen. What are you listening for? We did a session today. The guy clinched the deal because he paraphrased back to his counterpart that his boss donates a lot to Catholic charity. And so the negotiator played on that, giving aspect, and was able to get the free cup of coffee. Right. It's find out people's beliefs. That was my biggest issue, honestly, was I was not listening. I was trying to build rapport through other means, but listening. Assertion.
And it's interesting too that Dan, I think your mock negotiations have proved to me also. Your mock negotiation training proved this too. There's other currency than currency. And what I mean by that is the gift of listening and the gift of labeling someone's current status. That in of itself, and I recommend people to try this when they're out, like with clerks and customer service people, by simply just engaging them in their world and labeling their emotion, like observing their body language and talking to them about their current status. The service I receive as a result of seeing them that way and talking about it, and let them complain if they need to complain, or if it's a slow day and they look bored, just actually engaging them in their world makes an incredible difference in the rapport alone. So could not agree more.
And when they reciprocate, that builds empathy. And now you get into influence.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's why it's simple but difficult. Dynamic silence, still the most difficult one.
Yeah, and it's incredible. One of the tools we did not mention is the accusation audit, which is built on the back of dynamic silence.
Oh gosh, that's like super humble stuff right there.
Yeah, and literally, as you've taught it, and I've taught some of it, it's literally the tool that people still struggle with is accusation audit with enough dynamic silence in between the statements. It's interesting. It's challenging.
It's like poetry when someone uses it on you. Yeah, feels good. You wrote that for me. Yeah, right. People's favorite radio station, WTTI. Yeah, make it about them. Speaking about selfishness and getting stuff, I got my first big interview. Gary Noser, and the lead hostage negotiator for Waco, Chris Voss, the creator of the behavioral change stairway. Very humble guy. And I know if you asked me this, and I want to answer it in public, is he responded when I asked him. He said, "I might not be a good fit for your podcast. Your podcast is like business, Dan." And I explained to him, like, no, actually, you're a big influence in the non-negotiable show and everything we do. And so I was shocked that if it's like a business thing, why aren't you jumping on it? Why aren't you excited about it? Get yourself out there in front of prospects, right? That guy has such a strong referral network that he just wanted to talk about his show.
Yeah.
They're doing Netflix on him, Showtime's doing show on,
I cannot wait to like March 22nd, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says 50% accurate. 50%. So that's pretty good. He got to, overlook things. Talked about humor. One big aha moment is improv comedy is very useful in negotiations. A shortcut to report influence. Fastest free coffee I've seen. The guy from Toastmasters says, "Hey, I heard you guys got free coffee day today," like with a real playful tone. Had the counterpart cracking up and like, yeah, here you go.
Sure.
Yeah, sure, yes. Sure is. Wow, talk about tonality, right? That's paramount. Tonality. Gary's tonality. Let me tell you, how I said I didn't get the tension with him. However, I did feel like when you're in the presence of somebody that's dynamite, you're like, oh damn, like this person's pretty badass.
Yeah, and again, I think it's hard to understate for those who are uninitiated how big a deal having Gary on your show is. Gary is like literally the godfather of modern negotiation theory.
Yeah.
Literally the OG, and having Gary on your show is such a huge accomplishment. I'm so excited to check it out. It drops this week, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, this week I'll probably be dropping it. Great content. His answers were great, especially with the comedy stuff. You'd be surprised that the Waco guy, the crazy one, try to make some like inappropriate jokes, and you're like, yeah, you don't really laugh at it, but you don't disagree with him and be like, that's a stupid joke. You say, yeah, that diner is terrible, XYZ.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, and which comes from improv comedy. Very shocked.
Yeah, and it's also interesting too from an influence standpoint. They do teach that in influence language, that instead of saying I hear what you're saying, but that but creates it's a barrier, and it's not very good. But when you're trying to get someone to see your point, you repeat what they say and then you append it with and it has a much better chance of kind of going in, so to speak. But when you use but, I hear what you're saying, but it's basically you're negating, and it's more confrontational. So also great point on in this, and I cannot wait to check out the episode. It's going to be huge.
And I stole this from a negotiator, but what you're saying is, connecting, not correcting.
Yes.
Hey, inappropriate joke. Yeah, and XYZ.
Yeah.
Puts down the defense. But yeah, that's, what drove you to negotiation stuff? I think you told me your problem was also listening.
Oh, 100%. Just
and now you're a host, on a show.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And I guess once you flip the switch on interviewing and exploring someone else's world, It's a superpower that most people don't. I think some people are born with it. Some of my favorite accommodators are naturally good at it. But I was able to model my friend Alberto, for example, very, very good at engaging people in their world naturally. And just hanging out with people that are better at it than I am was a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah, he actually got a tactical empathy certificate from Black Swan Group, worth a couple of grand.
Very, very talented negotiator, and I really, and that's another thing that I think was underrated about hanging out with people that are doing this stuff and practicing it. They're all growth oriented, and there's a vibe that goes on with that too. Being surrounded by people that are growth oriented is just such an incredible dynamic. And also another reason why folks we haven't explicitly invited you yet, but I cannot recommend Dan's negotiation. It's easy peasy. No one's gonna laugh you out of the room. We're gonna give constructive criticism, and it's really not meant as criticism anyway. It's always meant to improve and give you the next step. And again, you're building a pathway, neural pathway, but a pathway to better performance. And Dan is so good at facilitating that group. And so I'm cordially inviting you on behalf of Dan here to attend on Saturday mornings. It's a great way to start.
And listen, bring what you got. It's not just Black Swan Group. It just happens that their stuff is pretty concise and good. Also, we like the truth detector material. Which is
so good.
Mislabels.
Jack Swagger is the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also like stuff like Ego Authority Failure. Another guy from Black Swan, Derek. Also, like, was it Ask Powerful Questions, which is
Will Wise
questions to the max.
OMG, Will Wise, and then there's also the Jeremy Minor NEPQ sales type calibrated question stuff. So good.
What and how?
Yeah.
So this week it'll be out, and I am very excited. I'm vision wise, I want to have like Brandon Voss come on. I want to have Derek Gaunt. I want to have other folks like Daniel Shapiro. The whole show, the Non-Negotiable podcast or the Non-Negotiable show. It is, Daniel Shapiro's book, Negotiating the Non-Negotiable.
Well, and it's interesting, and I hope this is the case. I feel like by being able to land Gary, that's hey, by the way, here, check out my interview with Gary, and might be a stepping stone in the right direction, because your show is so good. I've had a chance to participate on some of the episodes and just delving so deep into communication. And the reality is some of our livelihoods depend on our ability to communicate well. And it's such an incredible venue, Dan, to really delve into how do I get better, and also less resistance in life. I mean, some lives are so struggle and you're like clawing every day with a lot of conflict when you don't have to live that way. And if you follow Dan's podcast, you can get tips on how to really go a little bit less resistance through life, or maybe a lot even.
Yeah, just about getting out of your own way.
Yeah.
That tends to be my problem. The ego. I like one of our participants who has that mix and match and trigger happy class, Lauren.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like the problem that he has with this stuff is, where do I come in?
Yeah.
If I'm doing FBI methodologies, where am I in this? Like what are you, like a ChatGPT prompt response? Get stuff. No, I think the overall thing is you use it so you can identify if this person is hard, annoying, lame, frustrating, or if they're easy, lucrative, and fun. That's Joe Polish, marketing genius.
Yep.
Are they an elf or a half? And then you can bring out your ego. I shared one story where I thought I was comfortable with this person where I didn't do any of that behavioral change stairway. I'm like, instant report, you know, because of XYZ reasons, for sure. Boy, was I wrong. Yeah, I thought they were an elf the whole time. They were actually a half. Which another thing I like about this is give somebody 20 minutes of this stuff. Their true personality will start showing. They say a psychopath can't maintain more than 20 minutes. So you got to stay in that pocket, label, accusation, notice, calibrated question, dynamic silence, summaries, try to hit them with 2 of those in those 20 minutes. And you will know what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with.
Well, and Dan, you've always
Yeah.
stressed this, and I think that it's proven out to be in my case. Curiosity is really, if you have to stay in a curiosity state, and if you stay curious long enough, you will find the answer you need.
Yeah, it's the big saying, get curious, not furious. And believe me, I'm known for short temper. U.S. Marine.
Yeah.
And it's what I found fascinating. My favorite thing I read from all these books, man, I've told many people this, was a section in Derek Gahn's book, Ego, Authority, Failure. I think I told you the story. There's a army general, in this facility next to him, and he would always hear the army general scorning soldiers, and they walk out, sometimes crying. And one day, an employee of Derek Gant, whatever FBI agent guy, messed up. He goes in to talk to Derek Gant. Guy walks out. He's crying in the hallway. The general goes into Derek Gant's office and says, "I didn't hear you yell at him. How in the hell is he crying? What did you do to him? What did you do?" Derek Gant was like, the empathy, man. I made my counterpart verbalize his errors. Well, he didn't say all that, actually. That's just me. What Derek Gant was probably thinking. What Derek Gant said, I told the general, something silly, because he knew that somebody so far into the ego authority spectrum, it's really hard to bring them back to this other side of the spectrum, this understanding. And so I think that's mind blowing. And I'm so glad I didn't retire from the military, because I've heard of stories of sergeant majors at a soccer game for his kid, retired, telling people, call me by my rank. Don't call me by my first name, even if they're a civilian.
Yeah.
It's a whole different gear for sure. And you know what? And it's helped me out of speeding tickets. I mean, it's so versatile.
Yeah.
Right. Dynamic silence. I had the judge represent me to the prosecutor. That's wild. And I needed an attorney. And yeah, I mean, this stuff, that's why I call it negotiators on demand. Because unlike one of those FBI guys in a real scenario in the mock, you got 5 listeners behind you and a co-officer helping you listen. In real life, it's just you, and you can get triggered. And now you get into a correction, because we have correction addiction. And you're like, man, this person's terrible. And it's like, well, you've never really listened to them, what their drivers are. They say the only people that doesn't work on is people on meth. Like somebody that really destroyed their nervous central system.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, do you really want to be dealing with them? And as Chris Voss says, they're not there to kidnap someone, and it's an actual business deal. That's wild.
Yeah. And I think that's really great too. And another concept that I think was so incredible for folks in the real estate business or commission driven is, are you the favorite or are you the fool? And trying to elicit, okay, well, why do they want to work with me? Why are they here? And because you can spend a lot of time, if you're commission based, just trying to go the extra mile for someone who's never going to pay you.
They say if your average sale, the initial combo is 30 minutes, keep track of that. And you'll notice that sometimes you'll talk with someone for an hour, 50 minutes, and those tend not to close. That way, you get the data. That way, when you're in conversation, if, hey, this person is just milking me for info for 40 minutes, 50 minutes into this, he's not going to be, or she's not going to be a good prospect here. They're going to be hard, annoying, lame, frustrating.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's another thing that that was so special about learning the tools is you start to elicit more kind of calibrating your intuition a little better too on that sort of thing.
The nice thing is that it works over phone. With the whole corona, like people don't want to be in front of others as much anymore. Look at this, we're on Zoom. Totally prefer this. Although I wouldn't mind being in the room with Joe Rogan.
Right. Absolutely.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
You seen his walls, man? He's got like a bunch of stuff.
Pretty wild.
I got nothing. Nothing compared to Joe Rogan.
It's all good though. And again, I think for me, I've gotten so comfortable with Zoom. I don't know that I feel like it's so much more efficient. I don't know that I'm going to do a bunch of in-person conversations and the old school way. I feel like if you can get comfortable in this environment with these tools, you can definitely be more efficient.
Yeah. Eugene and I, we had this vision for company, high impact PICNIPs, high impact communication. Yeah, it's about that, having a higher impact, and you can do it through Zoom, you can do it through a cell phone. You got a netbook, you can Google Voice. It's really hard to say the resources aren't there for success. Dude, this is on an iPhone and Bluetooth headphones, and like this is wild. It's a wild time. And so kudos to you, man, for putting yourself out there. I hear a lot of people don't even watch TV, they just watch YouTube.
Yeah.
If it's not on YouTube, they don't know about it. And
yeah, that's very true. And again, you almost have to be Dan TV almost these days to really build a brand. You just have to do it over and over again, and it takes a long time to work too. And that's the part about it where I think a lot of people just don't stick with it, is it just takes so much time to create the flywheel. And so you just have to start brick by brick by brick every day, build it. And that's why we're excited to share the negotiation side with folks, and why I really am excited for the company you're building. It really will help people build the brick by brick by brick, and it's the communication tools that by working with Dan and the coaches, that you will see a massive improvement in your results. You just will.
For real. Come see me if you do feel those butterflies in your tummy when you're talking to someone. Yeah, come spend some hours with me and some folks, and they'll tell you what you can do to be in a. It's always about positioning, right? Flanking.
Yeah.
How you can flank better. In the new book, Wolf the Agent, that's one of the big principles, is instead of taking the highway right next to the major city, go around it. Yeah, that's a little longer. However, you're able to go faster. You get more impact.
Well, and that's a great point too, because the full frontal attack is always expensive in terms of energy, right? Or material, or whatever the battlefield, or any way you do that in any human effort, the full frontal is always the hardest way usually. So
yeah, like this combo's fun for me.
Absolutely. This is so fun.
Yeah, if you're going it's a lot of wasted energy trying to be more efficient. And you got to be efficient, especially if you're aiming for millions or $1 billion. Right now, we're just aiming for millions.
Yeah, and again, if you're looking to build something of any significance, I think these tools can build a, again, it's like building a foundation. If you want to build a mansion in West Palm Beach, you have to start with the concrete. And I really firmly believe these tools are
I
literally
will say something against the tools though, that I used to say against it, and I would still practice, but there was a side of me that was saying, if the deal looks good, the numbers look good, who cares about the emotions?
Mhm.
Cares, right? Even Dan Pena would say that. Many business people will. Who cares about emotional intelligence? Well, I kind of find out that a lot of those people, all of them, they'll have a dinner with the person they're going to make a big transaction with, and they'll ask their wife at the end of the dinner, like, "Hey, what was your gut feel on Douglas over here during dinner? You think he's trustworthy, right? Trust. That's all emotional, and he will not work with someone if his wife felt something bad about them."
Mhm.
And her intuition is typically good. And so I'm like, dude, that is emotional intelligence.
Yeah. And I have to
So we
testify,
are
I
better
have a
negotiators.
personal bad
Yeah.
experience by not listening to my significant other on that score.
Awesome.
Completely agree.
Yeah, that intuition.
Yeah, that intuition that, and again, this is probably going to feel sexist.
Yeah.
Females are better at it. I'm sorry.
You know why? And it's because they're able to accommodate better. They won't throw in the towel so quick. I see that in mocks. I saw it today. The guy's like, all right, throw in the towel. That's all I got. A woman would stay in that curious zone much longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that happen on a lot more with women, but they don't want to go up and practice.
Yeah.
It is pressure, right? So it's cool. I think if you're, again, that sounds sexist, if you're a woman that it's not like pressure, this is great for you. And if you're the opposite, if you're a guy that's super assertive, this is the opposite as well. This is
Yeah.
great for you because,
Yes.
as Chris Voss says, with assertive people, it's the easiest counterpart for him. They fall on their own sword. They come up with the ideas and the solution. They give out so much info. And if they tell you they'll do something, they'll do it. So I thought that was fascinating because I thought rush through. Yeah, no, got it.
And
Like
that's
driving a
another thing
car.
that helped me out a lot too. In the book, he talks about assertives, analysts, and accommodators. And to make that clear, we've mentioned it a few times here. And so the assertives, it killed me. I took a negotiator. There's a French negotiation company that has a checklist of your kind of your type.
Yeah,
I nearly broke the
ABM.
damn test for assertive. And then the funny thing is, my score went up the longer I practiced, and I thought that was strange because I thought I would balance out a little bit more, and in fact, I became more savage because of the tools. But it was really pretty insightful. And what the analyst will do is very different. An analyst will not give you data, and they're really tough to negotiate with. I think it's the hardest.
Yeah, that's who you want to be.
Yeah.
Analyst and accommodator. And if you have to, it's nice to be able to assert yourself. However, it usually shows up naturally. You don't need to cognitively go there, right? You should hang out in the analytical and accommodator zone. Yeah, it's like the bear thing that, what's his name? This is why I want to have him on the podcast. Brendan Voss talks about the bear analogy.
Yeah.
Right. An assertive will attack the bear and probably get mauled. An accommodator will bring the bear home for dinner and they become the, yeah. An analyst will get some distance, flank, go around, go up a tree and snipe, get a lot of info, and then take the shot. I mean, that's where you want to be. Yeah, but you should play with all the characters. I remember one time I was super accommodating on a mock. And yeah, I got 8 alive, and the guy said, what was up with that? And I go, well, I was being very accommodating. He goes, yeah, what's up with that, man? I wanted to take everything from you. I don't know why, man. I just wanted to just
I
want to
just
take
wanted to
everything.
crush you.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
go, oh man, that's the bear analogy, right? I brought the bear home and
that's
he
right.
wanted to take everything. And so I
Absolutely.
was very grateful to get that feedback. So it's good to go to a room where people practice in real life. They give you real feedback. You augment yourself, go play with it, break stuff, come back, play some more. It's all improv. We're strangers. There's low stakes, right? Other than your uncomfortableness. That's what's at stake. And I like new people because I get to make them uncomfortable, right? And that's fun for me, like the triggering stuff.
It really
That's
is, and super talented at making it a comfortable environment. You create a really great learning environment for folks, and it's again, I think it's very stressful to begin with, and I think that's why a lot of people. I mean, we post these in a group of 4,000 people.
yeah.
The fraction of people that actually take the risk of learning it and taking the opportunity is very small. Still boggles my mind. Literally thousands and thousands of value that you've generated for folks over time. I know I've personally received so much value from the mocks that in the practice. So the big thing, guys. We're getting close to wrapping up here, guys, and I just wanted to first and foremost really encourage everyone to give Dan's free. Here's the free. If it's free it's for me, right? A free
It's free.
mock
I'll take
every
3.
Saturday. You can show up and get some reps in and get your feet wet. Our friend Florin has a N9 and a trigger session and a label maker session where you can practice those tools from in the getting the tool set, the building blocks, if you will, of it. And then very soon, my friend Chi and I are going to roll out for if you've been more practiced and you've got that down, Chi and I are going to do some Harvard negotiation mocks for folks, maybe once or twice a month on Sunday. We're going to roll that, and I also am going to. If you're interested in the communication skills and taking it to the next level, be rolling out communication in terms of the power of storytelling and metaphor and language. And we're going to delve into storytelling, linguistics, and the power of words and storytelling will be a session going to be rolling out pretty soon as well. So, and finally, I cannot recommend following Dan's channel, Negotiator on a Demand, which will be in the notes of the podcast here. And his interview with Gary coming out this week will be incredible. Cannot recommend it higher. And then, of course, on Netflix, Gary's show about Waco will be on, and hopefully the most accurate depiction. There was a really great show about it, but from what I understand, it wasn't very. It was maybe 20% accurate or somewhere lower. I don't know if he talked about it in about 50. And so this is an opportunity to get a more accurate representation of what actually happened, and set the story straight.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I guess my final words are Derek Gaunt's words. If there's a want, you're in a negotiation.
That's absolutely right. I want or I need, guess what? You're in a negotiation. So if you'd like to do better in life, reach out to Dan, guys.
Alrighty, y'all.
All right. Thank